So I want to go ahead and turn this over to our in-house DNA expert, Sara Allen. She is our speaker today, and we are very excited to have her join us. She's been doing DNA for almost as long as DNA has been around. How many years has it been, Sara?
Over 20 years.
So she has a lot of great experience, and I know that she is keeping up on every trend. So she is our go-to person for DNA, and I'm very excited to learn more about why DNA. So Sara, would you like to take it away?
All righty. Thank you, Allison. So as Allison said, today we are going to talk about why DNA basics. So this is not an advanced seminar at all. It's going to be just the basics. One of the things you might want to know is that there are 3 different types of tests of DNA tests for genealogy, and that would be mitochondrial, Y-DNA, and autosomal. The mitochondrial DNA is going to be a test of the direct maternal line of the person who tested. The autosomal is going to be both male and female lines going back about to the 5th great grandparents or so of the person who was tested. And the Y-DNA is only available to males, and it's looking at that male's direct paternal line only. So, and that is the test we will talk about today. This is a lesser known about test, and not as many people are doing it. And I always like to talk it up and get people interested in doing this test. So as I said, it tests the Y chromosome. It's only available to men because only men have the Y chromosome. The Y chromosome is passed from father to son, virtually unchanged over the generations. And this is what makes it good for genealogical purposes. It's a test of that male's direct paternal line. And it's offered by the Family Tree DNA testing company only. There had been other companies that were involved in testing the Y chromosome, including Ancestry for a short while, but they no longer do that. And a lot of the other companies have gone out of business. There may be some other companies out there that are still testing, but they don't offer you matches. So Family Tree DNA is the oldest and most respected company, and they offer you matching on the Y chromosome test, which is what you really want because you want to compare your DNA to other people. Again, this is just a visual of which line we are talking about. So you've got your male over there on the left, and it's going, the Y-DNA is going up through his father, his paternal grandfather, his paternal great-grandfather, and so on off the chart, continuing that path. So if you order a test, there are basically 3 different price points and types of levels of testing, basically. So there's the 37 marker test, which is the introductory level test. And you can certainly upgrade it later if you so desire. The 111 marker test is better if you can afford it. And then the big Y, 700, is advanced. It's the highest level of test available today, and it's not for everybody. They also offered a 12 marker test, a 25 marker test, and a 67 marker test at earlier time periods. So you'll see people talking about that, and that's what they're talking about. Now, why would you want to take this test? Well, if you have the following problems or questions on the direct paternal line of a male who tested, this test could possibly answer those questions. So it could prove or disprove a theory of relationship. If you think that you might be related to a certain family on your direct paternal line, and then you test and you do match with people from that family, then you have proven your theory of relationship. It might help you to learn more about a brick wall ancestor. If your paternal line ends in a brick wall where you don't know who that person's parents were, this might help you break through that brick wall. It might help you link up to family in the old country. There are people who have got people here in the United States who have tested, who have matched up with somebody who lives in another country. And so they were able to then figure out that their family had lived in this particular area before they came to the US by taking this test. You could sometimes learn about your deep ancestry, like what tribe or people group did you come from thousands of years ago. This test might be useful for a male who is looking for his birth father. Now, you would want to take the autosomal test first. A lot of people can find their birth parents directly by taking an autosomal test, but sometimes in hard cases, it might be useful for the male to also take a Y DNA test. And of course, the Y chromosome test will give you just some general information about your paternal line. I tell all serious genealogists, that male genealogists, that they should take this test, at least the 37 marker test, just to see what it's all about. Because you never know when you might be able to use the information from the test. Okay, so I'm going to throw out some definitions because we are going to use some technical terms. I'm also going to try to explain those technical terms in plain English for you. And so don't worry if you don't follow all of this. I think you will follow eventually. So I'm going to throw out the term STR markers. And so STR stands for short tandem repeat. And you don't really need to remember that, but basically the STR markers are short repeating sequences of DNA at fixed locations on the Y chromosome. And so your STR results are a sequence of values showing the tester's DNA results on those fixed locations. So in plain English, this means that if you take a 37 marker test, that test is going to be looking at 37 fixed locations on the Y chromosome, and it's going to report to you your result or your value for each of those locations. So on this chart here, it's showing you across the top, those are the first 12 markers that are tested, and they have names. So this is a named location on the Y chromosome. The first one would be DYS 393. And you don't have to remember that. You don't have to know that. I'm just telling you that's what this chart is saying. So the person who took the test has a value of 14 under that marker. And on the second marker, they have a value of 23 and so on. So this is just what, how your results are reported to you. And you don't really have to know much more about this, except that that's what it's showing you. All right, haplotype. So that sequence of 37 numbers that I just showed you is called your haplotype. So that's unique to you. It's the term for the sequence of numbers that consists of your Y chromosome STR DNA results. Now, you can have exact matches who also have the same haplotype that you do. And this would indicate that you do share a common paternal ancestor at some point. Okay, SNP. Now these initials here look like SNP, but it's pronounced SNP, and it stands for single nucleotide polymorphisms. So basically, in layman's terms, SNPs are mutations on the genetic code. SNP testing assigns you to a haplogroup and gives you a terminal SNP. And the big Y 700 test, which I mentioned earlier, is advanced SNP testing. And it's not a topic that we're going to cover in this lecture. Haplogroup. So a haplogroup is a genetic population group of people who share a common ancestor on the paternal line or the male line. Top level haplogroups are assigned letters of the alphabet, and deeper refinements consist of additional number and letter combinations. Okay, so now I've lost you with the definitions, but I'll continue to kind of explain and reinforce what was meant by those explanations. So hopefully by the end of the program, you will understand what they meant. Okay, so after you take a Y-DNA test, you're going to get two different results. You're going to get your paternal haplogroup, which mostly refers to your ancient ancestry. And then you're going to get DNA matches. And these are matches to other test takers. So you will get the names of other test takers who are your matches. And these are people that you have been determined to be related to. All right, so when you log into your homepage at Family Tree DNA, this is what you're going to see when your DNA matches come back. So the three, you want to kind of investigate all of these options here, but the three that I'm going to focus on are the Y-DNA matches, the migration maps, and the haplogroup origins, which is under See More over on the right. So starting with the paternal haplogroup, remember that the haplogroup is basically the ancient tribe or group of men that your paternal ancestors belonged to. All the people in the haplogroup would share a common ancient ancestor who is thousands of years ago and probably will never be able to be identified because we don't have genealogical records going back thousands of years. And these would have been when people were basically of a tribal nature, which would be even less likely to have genealogical records. And the haplogroup is determined by shared mutations on your DNA with the SNP testing and similar haplotypes, which is the STR testing. So when you click on your migration map on your results page, you will get something that looks like this. And this is going to tell you your general haplogroup information. So you can see this person that tested is from haplogroup I. And down at the bottom of the screen, there's a little explanation of haplogroup I and where it's located today and so forth. You can see on the map that it's basically starting out in East Africa. And it starts out with a guy named Adam. This is not the biblical Adam from religious texts. This is an anthropological Adam. So this would be the first man that they were able to find a skeleton for, and that they had done anthropological digs, you know, and found this skeletal remains. And this is who we are talking about here. So it's anthropological Adam, and all of the different haplogroups will come out of Africa here, out of East Africa from Adam, and then move on up, follow a unique path based on that haplogroup. So you can see that haplogroup I comes out of Africa and goes into the Middle East and up into Europe. And they're saying that they were in Europe about 23,000 years ago, and they were one of the first peoples in Europe. Now, if you click on haplogroup origins, which is another one of the options on your DNA page, you will get more specific information about your haplogroup. So haplogroup I was the general haplogroup that this person belonged to. And then the numbers and letters after the I are branches that divide into different subgroups or sublineages of the human genetic tree, which is also called the haplotree. Could also be called a subclade. So the subclade and specific haplogroup for this test taker is I, and then there's the numbers and letters, FT115913. And again, you don't really need to know those numbers or memorize them, but you do need to know that this is basically your spot on the haplotree right now. It's also called your terminal SNP. Now that's a little bit misleading because your terminal SNP could change as more men test. So as more men take the big Y test and there are more refinements to the human genetic tree, your terminal SNP will change. And so you want to keep an eye on it when you log into your kit and see where it has, where there's been more development and where there's been more refinement. But this is mostly about your ancient origins. Now, caution, I've seen people get really excited because they share the same haplogroup with another person. And you could share the same haplogroup with thousands of men, because remember, this is talking about your ancient tribe, but you're only related in a genealogical time frame with the people who are on your DNA match list. And we haven't looked at your DNA match list yet. So you're going to share the same haplogroup with thousands of men, but it doesn't mean you're closely related to any of them. Now, the Y-DNA haplogroup importance. In the past, maybe even 5 years ago, it was thought that the haplogroup was not very important to modern genealogical research. But because of the new developments in big Y testing, which is the SNP testing, they have changed, experts have basically changed their mind. So now we are seeing that the haplogroup information can be relevant to your more recent genealogical research. So if you take the big Y test and the other men on your match list also take the big Y test, it can be meaningful to you in figuring out certain genealogical problems. But we're not going to go into that tonight. It's an advanced topic and we're talking about the basics. Now, I will say this. There are some resources, some of them are on your handout, and there are others listed here on this slide that you can consult if you are interested in learning more about the big Y. There's a book called Advanced Genetic Genealogy that has a chapter or two on the big Y. There's several Facebook groups that are devoted to the big Y, and those are very active. Family Tree DNA, they have a very good customer service department. So if you have questions about your big Y results, certainly shoot them an email. And I've noted that there are webinars on Roots Tech and on YouTube that are free about the big Y. And there are some on the Legacy Family Tree webinars site, which is a paid site. Okay, so let's move on to what we are going to talk in more detail about tonight, which is the Y-DNA STR matches. So your matches, and this is what's going to show up on your match page where it says Y-DNA matches. These are men who also took the Y-DNA test, and because they are listed as your match, this means that they descend from a common paternal ancestor with you. And this should be within about 1 to 15 generations back or so. That's a little bit of a squishy number, but that's generally what Family Tree DNA will say, is that they think it's probably within 15 generations if the person shows up on your DNA match list. Now, I'm going to say that you want to ignore your 12 marker and 25 marker matches in general. There may be a few exceptions to that, but in general, you want to start looking at your 37 marker matches, and then also any 67 or 111 marker matches as well. These are relevant to modern genealogy. So again, this is the STR values of a person who took the 37 marker match or the 37 marker test. So this person's matches would be people who have exactly the same STR values as you do, or very close to the same values. And family tree DNA will determine the levels of matching. So they're going to populate your match list for you. And if they put, like I said, if they put someone on your match list, you are related to them in some way. So this is what the match page looks like. And we're going to look at it in some detail here. And we're going to go from left to right. So over on the far left side with the first big arrow, you can see that this is a person who has taken a 111 marker test. And we are looking at their 111 marker matches, and there are 3 of them. Under that is the name, and I have blocked out the names of the matches because I don't have permission to show their names. But normally you would see the first and last name of your match, and you would be able to click on that person's name to get their email address. And this is how you would get in contact with your matches and try to share information with them. Now you can see that next to the wording that says 111 markers, you can see there's 67 markers, 37 markers, 25 markers, and 12 marker matches. Remember, we're going to ignore the 12 and the 25, but you will want to look at the 37 marker matches and the 67 marker matches as well. Then the next arrow that's kind of halfway between the middle of the page and the left says genetic distance. And so this is telling you that match number 1, the top match, is matching you at basically, let's see, it's a 111 marker match. And so they're matching you exactly, except for 8 differences. So they're calling them steps, but they're really differences. So there's 8 differences between you and match number 1. There's 9 differences between you and match number 2. And there's 10 differences between you and match number 3. This is on 111 markers. So this is still considered a match, even though you are not an exact match. And we'll talk more about genetic distance in a minute. Let's keep going along the top there. Over on the right, you can see that there is a column called paternal earliest known ancestor. This is a great column here. That is basically, it's family tree information that's been entered by your match about their earliest known ancestor on their paternal line. I happen to know that all 3 of the men who have tested here are surnamed Allen. And you can see that their paternal earliest known ancestor is also listed as an Allen there. So this is helpful. So even if I never get in contact with these men, these matches, maybe they don't answer my email, they have given me enough information that I can probably track down who Zephaniah Allen, born about 1750, died 1830, who he was. And I can do some genealogical research on him. And that's really a key piece of information going forward. So I'm very happy that match number 1 and match number 3 have given me their paternal earliest known ancestor. The next column over is the tree of the match. And you can see there's a symbol there. It looks like 2 dots and then a little dot underneath it. That's supposed to stand for family tree or tree of the match. And again, match number 1 and match number 3 have put up trees, and that I can tell that because it's colored in. And then match number 2, the diagram is not colored in. So that means he does not have a tree on the site, which is too bad because he really hasn't posted any good information about himself. So, but number 1 and number 3 have. So again, you can use your matches tree to determine more information about your match and more about his family, because that's really what you care about. You care about who his paternal line of Allens might be, because you're trying to tie them with your paternal line. And then the final column way over to the far right It looks like it's, again, a symbol, maybe a symbol of a chart of some sort. It looks like some lines, horizontal lines standing up there. That is the tip calculator. And I'm going to show you what that is in a minute as well. So you can click on that for each of your matches, and it's going to calculate a degree of relatedness between the two of you. So I promised you I would tell you a little bit more about genetic distance. So sometimes people are inclined to think that if the genetic distance is 0 between them and a match, that they must be very, very closely related to that person, whereas they're not as closely related to the person who they have a genetic distance of 3. And I'm here to tell you that that's not always true. It doesn't always correspond. So I'm going to say that you're related to all of the men of your same surname who are listed on your match list. And you should work equally to try to figure out your relationship to each of those men. It doesn't matter what your genetic distance to them really is at this point. And it's really not possible to determine how closely related you might be how closely related you are to that person by the genetic distance alone. It's much better to start comparing your trees and trying to figure it out genealogically. Genetic distance is basically caused by random mutations of DNA that happen over time. So they're not very predictable, they're random. And so it's not really indicative of the closeness of your relationship. So like I said, you should focus on all the matches of your surname, not just those closest to you in genetic distance. And so the genetic distance is basically giving you an estimation of a relationship, but it's not definitive. And Family Tree DNA has a chart where they're trying to explain genetic distance to you, and you can find this on their website. I will say this about this chart. It is trying to give you an idea, I think, of what the relationship might be, but they're making a projection or an estimation. And sometimes I have known this to be incorrect, basically, where it will say that the person is not related according to their little chart here and in a recent time frame. And I will know that that's not exactly true. So take this with a grain of salt. It's trying to give you an idea, but again, it's an estimation. And I think there are going to be some exceptions to this. Now, the tip calculator that I mentioned earlier is also trying to give you sort of an idea of where the two of you might, where your trees might coincide. And so this is based on probabilities. So you can see that these two people, Robert and Gordon, we're looking at the tip calculator for their relationship. And it's basically saying in 4 generations, they might share a common ancestor 66% of the time. 8 generations back, it would be 95% of the time. 12 generations, it's 99. So, and you can adjust the tip calculator down at the bottom where I have the arrow by adjusting the amount of relationships or the amount of generations that you think that the two might be apart. So if you think that Robert and Gordon are not related until 6 generations ago, you can change that on this chart and then hit the recalculate button, and it will recalculate your percentages. So again, this is giving you kind of a rough estimate of how closely you might expect to find the common ancestor, but it's not set in stone. It's basically just another tool that's trying to help you, but don't take it too literally. I get a lot of questions about different scenarios that people have with their matches. So I'm going to go through those and kind of give you some generalized ideas. So one of these scenarios probably applies to you if you have taken the Y chromosome test. you have matches of your own surname. Or maybe you don't have matches of your surname, but you have many matches of men of one other surname. Or you have no matches of your surname, but multiple matches to men of various surnames. Maybe you only match one other man and he happens to have another surname than you do. Or maybe you have no matches at all. I have heard of people with that situation. So I'm going to give you my ideas about each of these scenarios. And these are kind of general ideas, and they may need to be tailored to your specific situation. So if you do want me to look over your specific situation, be sure to send us an email, and they will put that in the chat when this program is over. The librarians will put that in our email in the chat for you to send us a question. So the first scenario is the preferred scenario. People want to have matches of your own surname. So if you're one of the lucky people, and I've heard different statistics that maybe 40% of us, maybe 50% of us will get matches of our own surname. And maybe it's a little higher now, but that's what I had heard at one time. So if you are the lucky person that does have matches of your own surname, basically, these are your cousins. And you want to start looking for a common direct paternal ancestor. And in order to do that, you're going to have to do genealogical research. You're going to have to work together with these matches and follow the clues and go back to basically research. This has given you some clues to follow, and you need to do research on them now, basically. Okay, I'm going to talk more about this in a few minutes, but for now, we're going to move on to the next scenario. So let's say you have matches to people of another surname. So if you have no matches to your own surname, but you have multiple matches to people of one other surname, what could this mean? This may mean that your name has been changed, or there's been a non-paternity event or an NPE in your family line. An NPE could be an adoption, a name change, a child who didn't take their biological father's surname, or some other kind of situation, similar situation. Obviously, more genealogical research is needed to verify this. This is kind of a wild speculation at this point, and you're going to have to do a lot more work to try to prove that that is what happened, or to prove what happened. And you probably will want to involve a DNA expert. So here's what I'm talking about. So let's say that the guy here that tested is named Mitchell, and he expected to see Mitchell matches. And you can see over on the right-hand side, the paternal earliest known ancestor of all of his matches is named Strickland. And they're all different Stricklands. Simeon, Matthew, William. Doesn't have any Mitchell matches at all. So what could this mean? Well, at this point in time, this guy needs to work with these Strickland matches. He needs to find out from them what they know about their Strickland line. So do they know how they're all related to each other? And then he needs to do some genealogical research to kind of track down which Strickland family this is, what counties they were living in, and what years. Then he needs to look at his own tree. Was his Mitchell family living in the same geographical area as these Stricklands? He needs to get a female out of his family tree in contact with one of these male Stricklands, right? So, and then he should probably test some more cousins on his own Mitchell line. So a third or a fourth cousin who is also surnamed Mitchell that basically descends from maybe a third or a fourth great grandfather, to try to determine when his branch of Mitchells became Stricklands or vice versa. And definitely, like I said, consult with a DNA expert. So let's say you have matches to people with multiple other surnames. So not just one surname, but multiple surnames. The first question would be, do you have matches to your own surname? And remember, we're always going to circle back and we're going to concentrate on matches of your own surname. If you have matches of your own surname, I would ignore the other matches to people of other surnames. If they write to you, you can certainly be polite and answer them and tell them about your surname and about what you know about your surname. But I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time wondering who they are or why they're matching you or thinking that this is somehow a false match or anything like that. Just kind of focus on your own surname. But if you match to people with multiple other surnames and you have no matches to people of your own surname, then that's a whole other story. So that is something that I am not entirely clear about why this happens. I suspect that one explanation could be that the connection is back in time before surnames were established. Now, especially if you're from a known people group that did not have surnames until more recently. And I would think that the Scandinavians and the Jewish cultures are two of those that have not had surnames until recently. Some of the Scandinavians and some of the Ashkenazi Jewish people did not adopt surnames until the 19th century. So this could be why. Now, there could be other things going on, and it would be really a case-by-case basis. And I would suggest, if this is your situation, that you do upgrade your test to a 111 markers if you haven't already. And you also want to contact your project administrator. So you can join surname projects at Family Tree DNA. So find one for your surname and join it. You can also email Family Tree DNA and ask them, why am I matching with all these people of different surnames? So here's an example of what I'm talking about. Again, this is a man whose last name is Mitchell, and so he's expecting to see Mitchell matches. Looking over on the right-hand side under the arrow, you can see the paternal earliest known ancestor for all of his matches are all these different surnames. We've got Urquhart, we've got Gray, we've got Donahue, we've got Campbell, we've got Eden. And so there's no real surname that stands out, and he's got more matches. Can you see over on the left-hand side, we're looking at his 37 marker matches, and he has 463 37 marker matches. That's a huge number of matches. And they're all different surnames. None of them, or hardly any of them, are the same surname repeating. So what is going on there? This would be a question to definitely ask Family Tree DNA about. And he would definitely want to upgrade his results, like I said, up to the 111 marker to see if any of these names kind of fall off the match list. Okay, what if you have tested and you only have one match? And I've seen this happen before. And the person happens to be of a different surname. Well, this is another case where it's hard to determine what is going on when there's only the two of you that are matching each other. You don't really have enough information to go on. Your match could have an NPE in his family, or you could have an NPE in your family, or there could be another explanation. I would say each of you needs to test more family members, and both of you should upgrade to more markers. And you should consult with a DNA expert. So here's an example here. This is again a Mitchell male who tested expecting to match with Mitchells. His only match is a guy whose family traces back to a James Murray. So he's matching Murrays and he's a Mitchell. So there's not enough information to draw any kind of conclusion yet. And so you really need the Mitchell test taker needs to recruit a member of his family, probably a third or fourth cousin, to test. And this Murray test taker should also test another member of his family. So you need more data to look at, and definitely want to, again, like I said, talk to an expert about what you should do next and how you should figure this out. Now, I have also seen this happen before. There have been people that have no matches at all. And this is at the 37 marker or higher level. They might have some 12 marker matches, but remember, we're not really counting those. So I try to reassure the people who have this situation that they are not an alien. This does happen. And again, this person might want to recruit some more family members to test to see if he can drum up some more matches just within his family. That will make him feel better, that to know that he's not alone out there. But generally speaking, this could be caused by a couple of different reasons. One might be that your paternal line is very small. So remember, you're going to have male family members who can take the test, who are living, who can take the test, who can match you. So if your family has a lot of females in it, if there just weren't that many male descendants, then it's going to be more difficult to find matches, right? The other thing would be if your paternal line is based in another country. So you're a recent immigrant to the United States. You may not have any matches at all. This is because the vast majority of people that are taking this Y chromosome test live in the United States or live in the UK. There are people in other countries, in other places of the world that are testing, but the numbers are very low. So if you're not from a British Isles background and you're not from, or your family has not been in the US for generations and generations, then this might be why you don't have any matches, unfortunately. We're always trying to recruit people to test from these different people groups and different places in the world, but it's slow going. All right. Now, I promised you that we would talk a little more about what you should do with your matches once you do have matches to your surname. So we're going to look at Donald Allen's matches, and this is my father, if you don't know that. I'm showing you my father's tree here to show you his paternal line that we need to be looking at. So we start out with my father, Donald. His Y chromosome would be inherited from my grandfather, who's private on this tree. And then he inherited from his father, who's David Allen. And then David inherited the Y from Jacob Allen, his father. And then Jacob inherited it from another David Allen on the tree. And then we need to go off to another view. And then we can see that David Allen, the second David Allen, inherited his Y chromosome from an Isaac Allen, who was his father. And that is where our tree stops for my dad's paternal line. So he's our brick wall ancestor, basically. I consider myself to be a pretty good genealogist. And there may be something out there that I have missed, but basically what I've been able to discern is that Isaac Allen was born around 1674 in Sussex County, New Jersey, and he died in Butler County, Ohio in 1849. I have looked at virtually all the records that I know of to look at. I've been to the courthouses. I've poured through various old court ledgers and other miscellaneous records at these courthouses and archives, as well as looking at obvious things like the census and vital records and print histories and so forth. And I've not found any trace of who Isaac's parents might have been. There are a couple hints, but they're just not substantiated and we can't find anything about these people. So for all intents and purposes, Isaac is where we stop. So the question was, can DNA testing help? And yes, it can. Autosomal testing might be able to help. We're not talking about autosomal testing tonight, but Isaac is Don's fourth great grandfather. And so he may have some autosomal matches that could help, but we're going to be talking about his Y chromosome matches. So this brick wall question is on my father's direct paternal line, right? So Y chromosome testing, if we get a match, could help us break down our wall, right? So Dad has taken the big Y test, which means that he has STR results at 37, 67, and 111 markers. And that's what we're going to focus on tonight because we're not focusing on the big Y. These are my dad's STR markers that we've been looking at all along. So this is his values for the 37 marker test. And so any matches that he has at the 37 marker level would have exactly the same values that he does or very close to the exact same values. And what my dad actually had was 24 matches on the 37 marker test. 12 of those matches were surnamed Allen, and then 12 of them were various other surnames. So remembering my advice to you, we're going to concentrate on those Allens. He's got 12 different Allen matches. Surely by looking at all of those matches and looking at their trees, we can maybe come up with some kind of solution to our problem, right? So these matches have to be males who have already also tested family tree DNA, and they share a common direct paternal ancestor with Donald approximately 50 to 500 years ago, or 1 to 15 generations ago. And it's probably going to be able to be figured out. That's just what family tree would say, DNA would say, that it would be within a genealogical time frame, most likely. Now, I did tell you that he had 12 non-Allen matches. So you can see that they are all 12 different surnames. There's not any kind of consensus there or, you know, some kind of red herring where we think, oh, maybe there's another surname involved. These are just people that for whatever reason are matching. We do not know how they relate. None of them have contacted me. And so I haven't had a chance to really talk with any of them. If they did email me, I would be happy to answer their questions about our Allen line, because I would say to them, based on this, I think you are probably an Allen. I don't know that for sure. You'd have to do more work, but that's my guess at this point. Okay, going back to my dad's matches, at the 67 marker level, he has 12 matches. And again, they are mostly Allens. There's 10 Allens and 2 other surnames. This means that his 2 of his 37 marker matches did not upgrade to 67. And then at 111 markers, only 3 of his Allen matches have upgraded to the 111 marker test. So that's why we only have the 3 matches. And they're all surnamed Allen. So what does this mean? Well, again, we need to keep working with these matches to try to figure out what is the connection. So our goal is really to determine the common paternal ancestor between you and your matches of the same surname. Did this ancestor live within a genealogical time frame? Do genealogical records exist to prove those connections? And we need to follow the clues. So your strategies would be contact all of your matches at this point that are of the same surname. So remember, Donald had 12 Allen matches at that 37 marker level. And that is a perfectly acceptable level of matching. And he is most probably related to all of them. So he needs to contact all 12 of them. Maybe they don't reply. Well, if they have a family tree on the Family Tree DNA website, if they have posted their earliest known ancestor, I can use that data to put together information about those matches without their explicit cooperation. And then you want to work together with the matches. However, sometimes they're not going to work with you. I have a couple of my dad's matches that work with me occasionally. The rest of the time, some of them will say things like, oh, Sarah, you're doing a great job. And others don't answer me at all. So they may not be getting my emails. They may have passed away. They may have changed their email address. I don't know. But I've had to do most of the genealogical research on this myself. And I'm motivated to do it, and I'm interested in trying to figure it out. So I just take the genealogical information that I can glean about these 12 matches and I start working on their trees and trying to go back to see who their earliest Allen ancestor was. Where did this person live? Who was their spouse? Who were their children? And so on. Just do genealogical research on this whole bunch. And you can also join a surname project at Family Tree DNA and contact the project administrator of your surname project and ask for help. These are all strategies you can use. So here are some of Donald's 12 matches. These are not all of them. And I put in names there. Those are fake names, just so you can't identify who they really are. But let's say, Roland Allen is descended from a Robert Allen in Jackson County, Tennessee, and Mitch is descended from Ananias from Somerset, New Jersey, and Merton is from Israel Allen, and Clive is from Jonathan. Jeremy and Paul are from Zephaniah Allen, and John is from Anthony Allen. So this is what I'm working with. These are the earliest known ancestors, and I'm trying to research those names and dates and places and come up with more information about these Allen ancestors. You really want to see if you can connect them all in one tree. Find out who the earliest ancestor that you can find for all of these. Could this be the ancestral head of this branch of the Allens? I need to make sure that I'm not taking their research as gospel. If it looks a little sketchy, I want to double check all their work and make sure that their tree is correct. And basically, Y-DNA has provided me with clues, and now I have to follow them with more genealogical research. So Y-DNA hasn't provided me the answer. It's just provided me with other Allen families that I'm connected to, that I know I'm connected to. I didn't know I was connected to them before, but I know that I'm connected to them now, and I can research them. So it's given me all these new avenues of research. So once I did all of that, and this took me a while, this was not like an afternoon's worth of work. This was, I'm researching 12 different men's family trees. So it took me a while. I made a trip to New Jersey, several trips to New Jersey to look into things. What I found out was that most of Donald's matches can be traced to an Ananias Allen who was born around 1664, lived in Somerset County, New Jersey in 1690. My working theory is that he's the earliest known Allen in this lineage group. He may be the immigrant ancestor, and all of the Allens in this group probably descend from him. I cannot prove any of this yet, but here's my tree that I came up with. So I'm starting with Ananias, the guy that I just told you about at the top, and he had several known sons, but the two that most of my matches seem to descend from are Ananias Jr. and William. And you can see that Ananias Jr. moved to North Carolina. So they were in New Jersey, and he moved to North Carolina. And Robert, so my matches that were descended from Robert and Jonathan were both down south, like deep south. I think Robert was in Jackson County, Tennessee. You can see the list of the earliest known ancestors up here. Robert was in Jackson County, Tennessee. Jonathan was in Kentucky. And these men probably are descended from that Ananias Jr. who went to North Carolina, because he had a lot of descendants who then went up through the Cumberland Gap into Kentucky and Tennessee when those states opened up. So that's my working theory right now. Ananias had a son, William, who stayed in New Jersey. And then William had at least two sons. One was Joshua, who went to West Virginia. And when I looked at my matches over here and who they reported as their earliest known ancestor, this Israel and this Zephaniah were both in West Virginia at early time period. And so it's most likely that they are descended from Joshua, who went to West Virginia. And then William's other son, George, stayed in New Jersey. And where did he go? Sussex County, New Jersey. My Isaac is from Sussex County, New Jersey. And so I'm tentatively saying that my Isaac is probably descended from this George. So this is what you do with your matches, is you try to determine how they're all related to each other and related to an immigrant ancestor or a earliest known ancestor that you can find. Now, the next steps, I mean, this is not done, but remember, I didn't know anything about who Ananias's parents were before this. And now I have all these cousins, basically, that I found through the Y chromosome testing. And there's a lot more that we can do. I'm trying to compile a list of all of Ananias's descendants and hoping that that will help me make some of these connections more securely. Like right now, I have a lot of guesses, but I'd like to be sure. This is meaning that I need to look at more genealogical records, right, here in this country. I've identified, like I said, that I think my branch is probably from the George Allen who went to Sussex County, New Jersey, but I don't have the exact link between George and my Isaac. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. Then there's Ananias's origins. We don't know where Ananias came from before he was in New Jersey. There are wild speculations, I would say, from several of the different matches that we have. I've talked to some of them. There's one guy that thinks Ananias was Italian. Don't ask me how or why he thinks that, but he does. There's one that thinks that Ananias was English from England. And that seems likely to me, although this guy might be barking up the wrong tree, but I think Ananias may be English. And then there are a couple people that think Ananias was Dutch because he was living in a very Dutch area of New Jersey. So this is also research that still needs to be completed. It's unclear at this point where Ananias's origins really were. So lots to be done, but remember how we went from not knowing at all anything about Isaac Allen, and now all of a sudden we have all these possibilities and we have all these relatives that we found and people that theoretically we could work alongside with if I could get them interested in helping and work together on this mystery. So this is, I think, a Y-DNA success story. And so I hope that this gives you some ideas of what you can do with your own Y-DNA research. And so in conclusion, I just want to say your results are unique to you. Your family story is unique to you. If you have confusing Y-DNA results, always get an expert to try to help you interpret it and try not to jump to any conclusions.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sarah. And we hope to see you on Tuesday for our next program. Have a good evening, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.